Today, I want to introduce you to a different type of church. And you've been to all types of churches before with loud music, soft music. Today, I want to take you to Fit Church. Fit Church. Let's go.
Welcome to the Monetize Your Ministry podcast.
And you get a chance to interact with them. To me, that's full-time ministry.
Really die happy because tattoo diabetes is like a thief. It brings in itself and then opens.
I want to provide content and things that are going to help change lives, and I simultaneously want to receive a blessing from that.
Now here's your host, Kamon Hans.
All right, welcome back. Another great episode, the Monetize Your Ministry podcast. This is the podcast to help you discover your unique ministry, develop it into a stream of income, and deploy it out into the marketplace. Now, we bring you people here who are making a difference and are also generating income. And I was online searching just on my social media, and this person's social media popped up to me. And I reached out to him and I said, I have to bring him to share with my audience. So let me introduce to some and present to others, Matthew Gay. Matthew, welcome to the Monetize Your Ministry podcast.
Thank you so much. Come on, I really appreciate you inviting me here, and I'm excited to chat with you, man.
Listen, and little backstory, Matthew had a little situation with his car, but he made sure he was here today. So Matthew, man, I just want to thank you. And we'll get you out of here so you can go take care of that as soon as possible. Is that all right?
Man. Let's do it.
All right. Here's a little introduction, and then we'll jump right in. Matthew Gay, Coach Matthew Gay, is the CEO of Fit Coach USA, which offers private fat loss coaching and an online fitness community. Here we go, called Fit Church Plus. Matt is a nationally certified personal trainer, weight loss specialist, behavior change specialist, but above all, he's a disciple of Christ. Having 10 years of coaching experience, Matt has helped hundreds of clients achieve long-term success on their health journeys and has spoken to thousands about the connection between following Christ and living a healthy life. Matthew, man, I'm so glad to have you on here. And what grabbed me is when I saw Fit Church. So before we dive into what Fit Church is all about, I want to just open up by just asking you this. When we see someone who's in the fitness space, we assume, Matthew, you've always been in tip-top shape. Tell me if I'm right or tell me if I'm wrong. Just kind of share your story a little bit with us.
Absolutely wrong. Yeah. I grew up in a West Indian family, man. So we ate.
Wait. What island?
Barbados.
Come on, man. I'm headed there next week. Seriously.
For real?
Yeah. So my father's family's heritage is from Barbados. I'm headed there for the first time next week. We'll talk offline, man. Yeah, headed to Barbados next week.
That's so cool, man. That's where my whole family's from. I'm first generation Bajan.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, growing up in a West Indian family, the culture is to eat. And I think a lot of people have that culture. They say, oh, I'm Italian, or oh, I'm African, or whatever it is, we eat. It's like, man, everybody eats. Right. But I really, as a kid, man, I was one of the chubbier kids in school for sure. So I was not in shape at all. I was really into music, but not really into sports and stuff like that as much. I played a little soccer and whatnot here, but it wasn't until I became an adult that I actually got into shape after being in a fatal car accident. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I was not always fit, not always healthy, wasn't always praising the Lord's name. Yeah. All that came later on in my life.
Yeah, I read that in your bio because I think we assume that. Matthew, I've looked on your social. This dude is slim, he's ripped. And for a lot of people, we think you cannot relate to me with my health challenges, my health struggles, my struggles with that. And, it sounds like God took you on a journey, even through your own challenges, to help you to identify with others who are going through that challenge. Kind of talk to us about why you decided, after getting into shape, to begin helping other people with the same struggle.
Yeah, I really just found a sense of therapy. I found confidence through my own personal fitness journey. And in 2013, my wife and I launched and had to close a performing arts academy, a performing arts school. And that really wrecked my world. So I found myself at the gym, not just carrying on with my typical workout routine and whatnot. I was really trying to escape like turmoil going on inside of me. And now that I wasn't going to be running the school, I needed to continue making money, but I wanted to serve people. I didn't want to just do anything. So I asked one of the managers, hey, what does it take to become a personal trainer? And he gave me some recommendations for places and organizations to become accredited. And so I began my studies through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And months later on that year, rather, I got hired as a fitness coach, and that started my journey.
Okay. So Matthew, your undergrad or your first parts of study were not in the area of health and fitness, it sounds like, because you mentioned Performing Arts Academy. Kind of talk to us about what's your educational and first part of your working background?
Yeah. So I actually went to Shenandoah Conservatory in terms of college, just my freshman year. And that was for vocal performance. All throughout high school, which is where I met my wife at the Governor's School for the Arts, and then into college, I studied opera. I sang opera. And so that's really where I thought my life was going to go. And I told you before, I was heavily into music my whole life. So that was my thing. That was natural for me. But yeah, after the first year of going to Shenandoah Conservatory, I decided I was going to come back home, and I was working actually with a band called Freedom Fighters. Totally different style, a bunch of MCs, and then I was one of the singers. We kind of had this reggae kind of feel, whatever it is, so that kind of was in line with my roots. And we, were proposed with a record deal option and all kinds of things, and essentially the band fell apart. I ended up going to TCC to get some, just some credits. Didn't know what I wanted to do next, but I know I didn't want to sing opera anymore. Right. And then I ended up working for a company doing sales. And actually, the first part of my working career, my life, was in sales, just accepting rejection over and over and over again. Wow. So yeah, that's where things started off for me. And I never realized how much of a role that would play in what I do now, being a business owner, but also as a Christian too, right? Because in order to present the gospel to people, you've got to be willing to put yourself aside and say, instead of wondering, what if they reject me? What if they don't listen to what I have to say or think differently of me? Just know that you're going to experience a law of average, just like with everything else. Mm-hmm. Your job is just to spread seed, and it will fall where it will.
Yeah. Our guest today is Matthew Gay, the Fit Coach, the CEO of Fit Coach USA. And so, Matthew, you tell us about the closing of the Performing Arts Studio, going, getting certified as a trainer, and then starting to work there. At what point do you start thinking, you know what, I want to do business again, open something of my own again? And is there any fear of doing that the second time? Talk to us.
Absolutely. There was a lot of fear, man. And I would say, shoot, for my first year of business, like, it was just like, oh, what if this happens again? What if it fails and closes down again? I didn't have the thought of starting a business until I would say maybe about, I don't want to lie to you. When I first started working at, I don't know if you guys have Anytime Fitness where you are, but
yeah.
I started working at an Anytime Fitness, and I went to a conference with them. That was back in 2016. Mm-hmm. And going to that annual conference and meeting different franchisees, I was like, "Ooh, I could do this." They at these conferences, they make it sound like the pinnacle, right? Like the fitness. Like, this is it, man. This is what you're working towards. So that was my first thought of, I want to do my own thing in fitness. Stayed working with Anytime Fitness. Ended up, when I left, I was like the overseer of 4 different gyms coaching programs, like the regional director of the coaching, I guess, if you will. But yeah, COVID hit, man, and shut down all the gyms, wrecked my whole world. And I will say, before, like the year before COVID, I remember being outside, mowing my lawn, listening to people talk about coaching online. And I liked the idea. Of being able to reach people across the globe. Not being limited to people in my area. I like the idea of being able to work from home or work remotely. That was all cool. And that was before, COVID hit. but I wasn't really sure of how I was going to do it because I was so used to, I was heavily into corrective exercise and whatnot. So I wanted to see people's form and technique, and I wanted to be able to help them connect mind and muscle and count reps and do all those very personal in-person type things. I had been coaching in person. This was, like I said, when COVID hit, I had been coaching in person for about 7 years, so that's all I knew. But when COVID hit and shut everything down, I was forced to adapt. I had to pivot and figure out how am I going to continue to serve my clients, because they still had paid good money,
Right.
regardless of a gym or not. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do to continue serving the people who've entrusted me with their health. And so I'm hosting workout classes in my kitchen with the speaker up on the countertop and trying to figure out, I've got a tripod in the sink. My house was small and it wasn't meant for that at all. I didn't even have a garage. So I tried to figure out how to make it work as best I could, and it did, man. It worked for a lot of folks and we kept people going. But finally, around June of 2020, I said, you know what? I think I can do this on my own. I really am tired of keeping my faith out of what I'm doing as a fitness coach. And I think I can do better. I think I can serve more people doing this a different way. And so I, sure enough, started my own company. It was gradual, but I was driving to people's houses with bands and kettlebells, and I was training people out of my parents' garage. And I had some folks online that I was doing stuff through Zoom. And then I had classes going at my church. I was doing it all, man. I was just trying to make it work. And then in 2021, I said, okay, I'm going all in on online, and haven't really turned back since.
Wow. Matthew, there's so many lessons. First of all, I want to just, COVID for a lot of people released some creativity, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
just we can't do it this way. Let's figure out a way. Right now, when we don't want to minimize the loss, and a lot of people lost, but for some people, it allowed you a chance to see that creativity that you didn't even realize that you had.
Yep.
But now that you're doing this, right? You said you were doing so many different things. Where did the name even Fit Church and that stuff kind of come from?
Yeah, so Fit Church actually started before COVID. Like, that was in 2019. I just started. I've been doing fitness classes in churches since 2015. It was like Freedom Fitness Elite at first, because the church was called Freedom Fellowship, and then it was Bodies at Best, and then and then it was Fit Church is what we kind of settled on. I really don't. I mean, other than God's intervention, I really don't know where that name had come from, but I had always embraced this concept of what I called faith-inspired training, which essentially means Christ-centered, spirit-driven self-discipline, right? Faith-inspired training. So the FIT in Fit Church stands for faith-inspired training. It just so happens to be an acronym that works really well with what we're doing.
Right.
My company is Fit Coach USA. The Fit still stands for faith-inspired training. I just came out with a book, Fit Church. That's the same thing. So that's where that name came from, and it just kind of stuck. And Fit has become this whole kind of movement thing that we're working with now, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you mentioned it this way, because it started as a ministry in your church.
Yeah.
And so you're working as a regional manager and in Anytime Fitness, and then you're doing this with your church. And by the way, one of the churches that I pastored, my background, I pastored, we had some times when we'd have worship and for our praise and worship, it was exercise. It was people loved it, right? People loved it. But at what point now, the point that you start now saying, this is how I serve others best, I'm going to start charging for it. Was there any internal struggle or even pushback you got from others that, hey, like, this is your ministry, why are you charging for it? Like, kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, it didn't start as my ministry. What happened for me that even gave me, I would say, the permission to start hosting workouts in the church is that for a while I was just training people. Remember, back in 2013, that's when I started training people. Well, around that time, I also I was really zealous in my faith. So around that time, like I'm leading Street Light Christian Project, and like we're doing street ministry and leading worship at the boardwalk down at our at our ocean front here in Virginia Beach, and we're doing all kinds of stuff. We're on the radio and we're feeding the homeless and all this stuff. So I'm very zealous for the Lord and zealous for serving people and sharing the gospel. For a couple of years there, 2013 to 2015, I prayed a lot. God, give me an opportunity to serve you and make a living doing it. I'm
Mhm.
praying and I'm praying and I'm praying. Keep in mind, fitness isn't really like a common ministry in many churches. So I didn't really have a reference that fitness was a thing that even applied to church or the Christian life. I just knew that it was what was paying my bills and something that I was personally passionate about, but I didn't necessarily see it as something that the church needed. So I prayed, God, give me an opportunity. And one day God really opened my eyes and said, like, look, you got to stop asking me for something I've already given you.
Mm.
Like your vocation is actually what you're using as an occupation right now. So I was reading one day and I'm looking through Exodus and I'm reading about Moses, and the footnotes in my Bible highlighted his staff for some reason. I can't remember exactly why, but all I remember is that it talked about how there was engravings on the staves of some shepherds. They would mark up their staffs with certain milestones and things that happened in their life. They would mark that staff went everywhere with them as a shepherd, right? So they would mark it up with things. And so I took that as, wow, when Moses laid down his staff at God's command and God then turned it into a serpent, he laid down, figuratively speaking, his life, and God made something out of it that he could not have. More specifically, he made down something that symbolized or represented his occupation,
Yeah.
shepherding. And God had now said, I'm used what is in your hand when he walks to the Red Sea and he's like, what do I do? God says, what's in your hand? The same thing I've been using for my occupation all this time. And so he says, raise that up. He raises that up, and now you've got over 400,000 people
Being free.
crossing the Red Sea on dry ground, as the scripture tells us. So God took something that represented his occupation and made it his ministry. He made it his vocation. All he had to do was give it to him. And obviously there was some pushback from Moses, but ultimately he said yes. And God turned his occupation into something completely different. So that inspired me. And I said, wow, God, what if I took my occupation and what I'm using and used it for the church? And that birthed the first fitness ministry for me.
Nice. So Matthew, I was looking on your website and I look at one, you have a big vision, bringing health to the church and the gospel to those looking for hope. And it's spelled out there. And we'll give the website later.
Yeah.
And then I love the to accomplish our mission, 4 primary vehicles: the Kingdom Blueprint Workshop,
Yeah.
the Fit Church Ministry Program, the Alive Fit Festival, and the Fit for Heaven program. Kind of talk to us about, for some of us, we are monetizing our ministry, and maybe ours is finances, maybe it's family life, but how do you now package it in ways that you take it to individuals and take it to organizations? Kind of talk to us about like those 4 areas that you've packaged it.
Yeah. So in order to bring it to the church, we've had to really shift our approach, because while we've hosted workshops and the Alive Fitness Festival is something that is soon to come and down the road, our biggest mission in terms of the church, and especially in terms of making health and fitness a part of American church culture, has been to actually plant fitness ministries in churches. And so we've started the fitness ministry program through Fit Church. That had to change forms, because I can't tell you, man, how many churches have presented this idea of even hosting a free workshop where we just talk about health and fitness and been turned down or completely ignored, or nobody ever reached back out to me and they said that they would, right? So a lot of churches just don't see the significance of this. We've had to shapeshift. So when it comes to getting fitness into the church, I've had to now turn to the people who are willing to head it up, right? Instead of going to the church itself, we've got to go to the people who are the fitness enthusiasts and the coaches and the dietitians and stuff like that are following Christ and a part of a local body, and through them get church fitness ministries started. And so we've begun to do that, and that's really, really cool to see people. I mean, I'm talking to coaches and people every week now about how they can get their fitness ministry started. There's so many people out there that love the church and love God and are passionate about fitness and know that it's a need in the church, but they've just been on the fence about it, or there's a lot of resistance towards it. And I know why, because it's the same reasons that I didn't start it at first. I didn't even see that it was a thing at
Yeah,
first.
why is that?
Yeah, well, there's so many reasons, man, and I talk about this in my book. But one, again, there's not a huge emphasis on health and fitness in most churches. The
Mhm.
church culture, if you think about it, is kind of unhealthy from most people's perspective, right? Even
Mhm.
those of us who have been in church our whole lives. A lot of churches, like every event you go to, it's like fried chicken and mac and cheese and all the desserts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Pastor is out of shape and has no sense of self-discipline around food or exercise. That's a lot of churches, not all, but a lot of churches. And so I don't want to generalize in what I'm saying. So I make sure to add that in.
Mhm.
But the culture overall in the American church is very highly influenced by just the American culture,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
We haven't really set ourselves apart in that regard. And so because of that, you have pastors that don't think it's a need in the church, or there's no room for that in our yearly agenda, or that's more of a secular thing, right? Health and fitness are a secular thing, not necessarily a Christian thing, right? Because again, of kind of the way that we've made it to be. So there's a lot of reasons as to why a lot of folks are dealing with pushback. We had somebody the other day that's we have something called a Christian Coaches Collective. And she went and presented it to the church. We got her all set. She was really excited. She still is. And she's trusting God, but took it to the church. And I'm like, yeah, we tried something like this already. It didn't work. So nah.
Mm.
And she's like, well, that was the past. And I'm here right now. Like, what does that have to do with me? Like,
Yeah.
you mean to tell me that nobody in our church is dealing with diabetes? Nobody in our church is dealing with obesity. Nobody's dealing with chronic illnesses here. 4 in 10 Americans are dealing with more than 2 chronic illnesses. 6 in 10 are dealing with at least 1 chronic illnesses. Chronic illness is the leading cause of death in America. I think it's a ministry we all need to be getting
Yeah,
into,
absolutely.
because people are literally dying from it. Like
Yeah.
moms and dads are gone.
Yeah.
Like uncles, aunts, grandmothers, grandparents, pastors, people leaving this earth earlier than they should have at their own hand, right? Because of what they did to themselves. And their church really wasn't doing anything about it. They're showing up to community groups and services, and all they're getting is, donuts before church, and they're showing up to the events and it's garbage there. And then they're going to community group and it's buffalo dip and this and that. And so it's like, there's no real help there. If anything, it's almost like serving shots at community group when you've got an alcoholic there. Like,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
don't treat health and fitness, that we're not seeing it that way. And so, um, it's not emphasizing. You got a lot of folks that are wanting to do something about it, actually receiving pushback.
Yeah. Matt, you bring up such a good point. I think sometimes as a church, we don't we emphasize, of course, our members' spiritual
Yeah.
um growth, but we miss a huge part, right? Like, and I'm talking about entrepreneurship and people using their gifts. I think we miss that, and then we're missing health.
Yeah.
That if we don't help our members to become healthy, I think we're missing part of their discipleship
Yeah.
there. And I want to just commend you for doing that. Now I need to understand this, and we need to understand this. So, and I think this is going to help someone, right? With Fit
Yeah.
Church, and you raising up Fit Church Ministries. If a church is coming on, is there any sort of charge for that ministry being established? And then if there isn't, like, how are you even sustaining this business that you're doing? So just kind of talk
So
to us about that.
the ministry program, it's $50 a month to be a member of that. And we provide you with the weekly workouts, the devotionals, promo products, like all promotional materials, not products, but materials. So we just make sure that it's really easy for you to run your ministry. Even if you're not experienced in running a fitness class or something like this, we make sure that you have that support. We have a monthly roundtable and talk about what's going on in your ministry, make sure that you're doing the right things, and help you to grow it and give you those suggestions and pointers, and just be that source of support. It's not necessarily easy running a ministry of any kind.
Yeah.
And a fitness ministry is no different. So the support system is there. So that's $50 a month. That is not something that puts food on my kids' tables necessarily.
That's right. I know that's right.
Yeah. I make my money through one-on-one online coaching. That's really how we sustain what we're doing. People are committing to a one-on-one or private group coaching program for 6 months to a year. And that is what fuels the whole operation.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, this is a good point, because you talked about back in 2020, man, how come I do this stuff online? So you figured it out. Like, talk to someone who is doing something in person and maybe needs to move their business to online. What are some of the things you had, like you mentioned, how would I see someone's form? How do I, all of those things that you need to do for the work you're doing? How do you package it in such a way that you're still able to achieve the same results?
Yeah, and that's a bit of a loaded question, but if I were to simplify, when it comes to workouts, when it comes to designating their nutritional goal for each day and keeping a track of their progress, we use an app, and so that's how they receive their workouts. Every exercise has a video tutorial. Their reps, their sets, their timers are all set for them. They just follow along with the workouts, and they can mark it off when they're done. When it comes to tracking progress, measurements, progress photos, weigh-ins, all that goes into the app. And then nutrition goals, it connects to MyFitnessPal. They can track right directly in the app. So we found a solution that helps us to hold them accountable actually all throughout the week, which I didn't have that before. I can see what they're doing all throughout the week. Then we created a system to where they're checking in with us once per week. They fill out a form, and it lets us know what's going on in their life, mentally, spiritually, physically, and habitually, so that we can then give them those pointers for that next week and keep the needle moving forward. And that's just on a basic level. But if you're doing something in person and you want to shift it to online, all you have to do is come up with a system. Now, for us, we just needed certain tools. Like in health and fitness coaching, you need to have a way to deliver workouts. You need to have a way to keep a track of the progress that person is seeing, and know what it is that they're doing and they're not doing, in comparison to what the goals and the strategy actually is, right? That's accountability. So you've got to be able to provide accountability. You need to be able to provide support. And for us, because it is a Christ-centered, faith-inspired program, we have to have a way to be able to guide them from a biblical sense through the mental and emotional aspects of health transformation, not just giving them nutrition strategy and workouts to do. There's more to it than that. But whatever your business is, if you want to shift it to online, and honestly, I would say, man, I think personally, in some ways, you can provide more value. In my field, you can provide a lot more value online, only because you are not tied down to one person at a time. Now, in some businesses, you just have to have those spots where you have appointments, and you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, for me, there's only so many hours in the day. And I found myself, if you are pretty decent at coaching, you are going to have a decent amount of clients. So it's, hi, Stan, bye, Jan, hi, Stephanie, hey, Stacy, you know what I mean? You are, you're taking people in. There's a revolving door of clients all throughout the day. So maybe you see 4 people in a day, 5 people in a day. How many people? And if they have 2 or 3 sessions per week, you're kind of capped at how many people you can work with.
That's right.
And when they're not with you, you really don't have the time to focus on them. They can't just reach out to you and say, hey, Matt, what do you think about this, or whatever it is? Because you're working with somebody else.
That's right.
Right. So you get 30 minutes of my time per week, unless you pay for 2 sessions a week or 3 sessions a week or 4 sessions a week, right? Which that can get pretty expensive. With online coaching, it's one price that covers you for the full 6 months, or you can break it up into monthly payments. But I'm available to you. And now I've got online resources for you to look at. And I've got a mini course for you to go through that's going to answer a lot of those questions I already know you're going to have, because I have this experience. And you know what I mean? So you're able to do the workouts whenever you want. You don't have to show up to the 6 a.m. appointment. If you want to do it at 4 o'clock on some days because it works better for you, cool. So it's more convenient. You're getting way more value. It's more convenient for me, right? It just works out better for everybody. And now my clients are gaining that sense of independence, which that was a big thing for me, and maybe a big thing for somebody else. You're scared that people are not going to be as reliant on you, so it's going to mess with your money, or you already know people are reliant on you and you don't know how you're going to provide the same quality of service if you're not in their face. The truth of the matter is, you may be holding yourself back, because when these people do start working with you in a remote way, you'll find that they do have to be more accountable. They are building their sense of independence, and not just them. You're going to be challenged with the task of making them more independent. Doesn't mean that they won't need you. It just means they won't need you in the same way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
you're actually building up that human being, which I think as believers, we got to stand before God. We can't be like, you know what I mean? Like holding people back and making dishonest gain. We need to give people our best.
And it sounds like the goal is transformation.
It is.
And transformation, the tools and the opportunities are available to us online, allow us to even provide even more tools for transformation for those we work with. Matthew, I need you to tell someone how they can get in touch with you, and then how they can connect with what you're doing with Fit Church, and even access your coaching. So give us some of the links and the stuff so I can put it up here.
Yeah, please. So www.fitchurchunited.com is where you can learn about some of our coaching programs. You can learn about the ministry opportunities that we have, and just get in touch with me. As always, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. The handle is @FitChurchUnited. Those are the best ways to reach out to me. You can send me a message there if that's easier for you. But yeah, I would just get in touch with me if you are thinking about starting a fitness ministry, or if you really want to take your health more seriously and you do want to approach it biblically. You want to approach it in a way that considers biblical principle and God's will, but also takes into consideration the scientific and evidence-based methods, and marries them together in a way that's sustainable and productive. Talk to me about that, because that's what we do.
I love it. Listen, Matthew, thank you, man. Thank you for just showing us how God, just God leads us. Yeah. And then I love what you said. My occupation becomes my vocation, right? Yep. And I love that. And just for someone today, you might be wondering, God, how do you want to use me? God might be already telling you, I've been showing you this. Step into it. Step into it. And so I just want to encourage someone, step into what God is calling you to do, and move your ministry out into the marketplace.
Thank you for listening to the Monetize Your Ministry podcast with Kamon Hines. For more information, visit our website at www.monetizeyourministrypodcast.com. That's www.monetizeyourministrypodcast.com. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please share this episode with someone who needs it. Let's increase our income and impact.